All right, good evening, everyone. Bill Kirk with Washington Gun Law, the guy who cannot get any of the tech stuff figured out tonight, and I want to apologize to all of you. I'm flying out of town tomorrow, but I am going to schedule another live chat, which I will not F up next time, I promise. This is totally on me. I actually hit some things with my settings and screwed it all up, and so this is totally on me. But I promised you guys some content tonight, and goddamn it, this is what we do here at Washington Gun Law, is we want to educate you in the lawful and responsible gun owner. So I am going to I'm going to tape this as we go, and then I'm going to upload it tonight so you guys have some things to do. Listen, some opening comments real quick, and some things that were brought to me before we couldn't go live here, okay? First thing, Washington State Legislature, we're going to talk a little bit briefly about that. We had a bloodbath of a legislative session. I think a lot of us got really caught up on 5078, the magazine ban. I think there's good reasons to be caught up on that, and I certainly think that there's a lot of dangers that can come in that law with the addition of one extra word somewhere down the road in the legislative session by just merely adding the word possession. I think the bill that you all really need to pay attention to, however, is House Bill 1705, and we've done several videos on that, and I want you all to pay attention because there's a lot of devilish details in there, okay? So please pay careful attention to those videos. I also want you to pay careful attention to what's going on with the ATF. The ATF is losing their collective minds on lots of things, whether it's force reset triggers, unfinished frames, the AR pistol. There's lots of things coming. So pay careful attention to some of the videos that we've done on the ATF stuff. Okay, now I want to make a couple of announcements here real quick. First of all, yes, some of you have asked about a Patreon account. Yes, my Mrs. Gun Law, Mrs. Kirk, is working on setting up a Patreon account, and we are going to get one set up. So thank you very much for those of you who turned me on to it. I really appreciate it. One of the things that we would have done tonight had we actually had a real live chat is I would have done a super chat. Someone tipped me off about that. But you actually have to monetize your YouTube page. And I want you guys all to know something, that I have never monetized the Washington Gun Law page. Now, I may do it at some point, and you will know when it happens because you'll have ads running on the videos. But I've chosen not to do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is supposed to be an educational experience, and so we try not to do a lot of marketing here. Secondly, once you start becoming a monetized, then Google's going to take a much closer look at your material. And while I think our material is perfectly fine, I don't think we're taking particularly controversial view on anything. Anything related to firearms has a tendency to really get in Google's ire. So that's one of the reasons I've resisted that. I may be looking at other ways of monetizing this site. I may monetize it at some point. Right now we're going to do a little bit with Patreon, but that's why I don't have Super Chat. And if you see Super Chat the next time we get this right, then you know that I have monetized this website. Okay. I wanted to talk about a few things. There was a question that was asked by Charles Hetrick. Charles is one of our longtime viewers. Charles, thanks for joining in. He was one of the first ones to log in tonight. And he said, listen, what do we do about all of these Second Amendment what do we do about all of our liberal friends in Washington who candidly are anti-gun because they're uneducated? And it's a great question. And I think for all of us statewide, especially for those of us here in the Puget Sound region, I think Charles raises a really good point, and I think it provides a little bit of guidance for what I think all have a duty to do. And it's essentially this. I think that the gun-grabbing crowd, the anti-gun crowd, comes from one of two places. There is a very small segment of which that have been victimized by gun violence. And candidly, I don't think there's anything that we're going to be able to do to convince them one way or the other of their position. They are firmly entrenched, and I think candidly, as some of us may have been victimized in that way, there's such an emotional connection to that issue at that point that it might be impossible to divorce yourself from, okay? But the large majority of the anti-gun crowd is completely uneducated. If you ask them anything about the functionality of guns, the purpose of guns, how guns work, why people carry guns, they have no knowledge whatsoever. And I've done a video on this before, and we've talked about, we try to do this through legislation, litigation, intimidation, frustration, motivation, all of those things. But what we don't ever really try to do, and this is where I think all of us have a duty as lawful and responsible gun owners, is we have a duty in education. And I think that we do need to take our gun-grabbing friends, our liberal friends, out to the range. Many of them have never pulled a trigger. And, some of them are going to be turned off by it, and that's fine. But many of them will not. Many of them will be enthralled with the activity and might themselves get into it. So I'm going to follow one of Charles Hetrick's advice here. And I think that in the next month, let's take a liberal to the gun range. Let's take our liberal friend to the gun range. Let's do it. Charles, you're going to lead the charge. Well, next month, you're going to tell us how we did. I want to hear from all of you. Grab one of your friends who doesn't know jack squat about guns. Take them to the range, have some fun, and see what they say afterwards. And, if we can start doing this person by person, we can start doing that. We can actually start educating the country and maybe have a fair and open and frank discussion about our Second Amendment rights. Okay. Question about unfinished frames. Okay. I want to talk about 1705 untraceable firearms. An untraceable firearm is any firearm that does not have a serial number on it that was manufactured July 1st, 2019 or later. If you have a firearm like that, you are going to need to have it serialized by March 10th of 2023. Now, here's the reality. I was over in Spokane over the weekend. Love Spokane. Hi to everyone in Spokane. I talked to a lot of FFLs there. I've talked to a lot of FFLs here about the serialization of these unfinished frames or receivers. And here's the bottom line. There is really not a lot of FFLs that are going to be willing to do this. The price point that would make it worth their while wouldn't make it worth your while. To do so is going to subject yourself to a tremendous amount of more of ATF scrutiny at a time when we know that the Biden administration is actually beefing up enforcement efforts, especially in the FFL industry. And so what you're getting from a lot of FFLs is, hey, it ain't worth it to me. I'm not going to do it. So I think that those of you who want to get your unserialized firearms serialized no later than March 10th, 2023, you're going to have a really hard time finding anybody willing to do that. I think you're going to have virtually an impossible time finding it. And when you take a look at what the price point's going to be to do it, if you actually find someone, you're probably better off to go out and buy a serialized receiver, strip the components off the unserialized one, put them onto the new one. Yes, I get that there is a need to not have government have trace of your firearms. I get that need. But I'm trying to teach you guys how to act in compliance with the law. Can you go out and get the untraceable firearms made traceable? Yes, you can. Are you going to have a hard time finding someone who can do that for you? I think you're going to have a very difficult time. And I think that if you want to continue to use those firearms in that configuration, you're probably going to need to swap out receivers. So, word to the wise. Another individual asked earlier, excuse me there for a second, about FRTs, force reset triggers, the rare breed trigger. And let's talk about that for a few minutes. As you know, we did a video, and in that video, we talked about how there is an open letter to FFLs that are saying that some, not all, but some FRTs, force reset triggers, constitute unlawful machine guns. And yes, they are going to be coming to those FFLs. They're going to be looking at shipping records, sales records, and all of that stuff. Which FRT that you may have and whether or not it is considered a machine gun or not a machine gun by the ATF is very difficult because the ATF hasn't given a lot of specifications on that. And as we also know, the ATF so routinely changes the rules midstream anyways. But my advice, if you have an FRT trigger in your firearm right now, and you're not going to want to hear this, but I do believe that the worst that can happen is you're going to end up getting a nasty little letter from the ATF saying, we have records that you purchased this, you need to turn it back in. I would probably remove it from the firearm, especially when we take a look at what the ATF is doing with that right now. It probably is best to come out of the firearm, and yeah, you might need to be prepared to give it up. That's the bottom line here. Now, are there going to be some lawsuits? Are there going to be some injunctive actions that are going to be attempted? Absolutely. So is this all subject to change? Yeah, it can change tomorrow. But as we sit today, April 4th, 2022, this is where we're at, okay? So those are some of the opening comments that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to get over here to some questions here, and I'm going to let all you guys know. Okay, let's talk about Big Bosley. Big Bosley's got a whole bunch of questions. I have an 80% thing or a Washington ban something. I like that. Law enforcement comes to my door looking for trouble. I inform them that I moved. Said item is in another residence out of state. I am no longer in possession in this jurisdiction. Yeah, that's true. You're no longer in possession of this jurisdiction. Is that going to satisfy law enforcement? I don't know. What are they there for? What are they looking for? And And how well do you come off? I mean, you're trying to get inside the head of a particular law enforcement officer. It's really difficult to do. I'm going to scroll back up here a little bit and just type something here real quick. Okay, so here we go. Jesse L., I cleared up my NICS issue and now the Spokane PD delayed my firearm. Jesse L., if you had to restore your firearm, and we got some videos coming out on that, I'm going to talk to you guys about restoration here for a minute. But listen, if you have restored your firearms, first of all, congratulations and thank you for doing it correctly. Number two, I got a video coming out with a longtime viewer of ours. I'm not going to use his name here because we used a fake name on the video too. But and he knows who he is because he was watching tonight. But you are probably almost routinely going to always get a delay. Okay, you're not going to get a rejection, but you are routinely going to get a delay. So you need to budget chronologically for that. It happens everybody I know who's got their rights restored, they're getting delays, even though they know they're good to go. Okay, now, one of the other things I wanted to talk about restoration work, okay, this is cool, is a lot of you have been asking about firearms rights restoration. I know most of you are lawful and responsible gun owners, but some of you out there, some of you viewers out there, you want to become lawful and responsible gun owners, and I want you to as well. We're going to be launching a new website later this month. It's going to really streamline the process for anybody who wants to restore their firearm rights. So if you have friends, you know, who had that felony way back in the day or that old DV thing or whatever it was, screwed up when they were younger and, you know, much changed person now and they want to restore their firearm rights. And there's a real need right now. I think a lot of people lost their firearm rights, you know, 20 years ago on some stupid felony and it's like, I'm never going to need a gun again. And then, unfortunately, we get in the situation where the world starts coming unraveled at the seams and they want a gun and they need one right now. So we're seeing this huge influx of otherwise lawful, responsible folks who need to restore their firearm rights. So this is a very easy domain to remember. We will be launching getmyrightsback.com, and you can go there, you can take a quick survey, find out whether or not you are eligible to restore. If you're eligible, it'll tell you that right away. If you're not eligible, but you will be at a later date, it will tell you what that date is. And if you're never going to become eligible, it will unfortunately break the bad news to you that way, which prevents me from having to do it. That's nice. But, and then you can sign up and get right into the hopper and get your process going, all that. So that's going to be getmyrightsback.com. And Jesse L., sorry about the delay. Get used to it. I think it's going to happen some more. Ryan Berg asks, sounds good, FRT issue, what should I do with it? Asking for a friend, of course, because I know you don't have one, Ryan, and that's good. But tell your friend that I would probably take it out of the firearm for now. I think that there's trouble on the horizon coming on that one. Okay. Jesse L. talked about magazines. Again, magazines, whatever magazine that you guys have now, if your regular carry is a 15-round magazine, I did a video on this. My normal carry is either a 12 or the one I most frequently carry is 15. Come July 1st, I'm still carrying that firearm. I'm still carrying those magazines. You guys all get to carry your magazines as well. You're not going to be able to buy new magazines that exceed 10 rounds come July 1st. That's true. And a little word to the wise, if let's say you're thinking like, well, I've always wanted to get that Glock 19. I don't know when I'm going to get it or I got a budget for it. You may want to buy the magazines now. And you can always buy the firearm later because when you buy it after July 1st, it's coming with a 10-round magazine. Endoplasmic reticulum. Great name. I can almost pronounce it. What if my 80% lower was serialized at my request by a dealer long before the current statutes? Intent was to make it traceable. Is that going to be a problem if the number doesn't match their format? Yeah, I think it will be. Great question. I do think it will be a problem if it doesn't match that format because that format is put there for a specific reason. And as you can read, if you read the statute, there's really no exceptions to that. So yeah, I think you may have to be reserialized. That's not the answer you wanted to hear, but there we go. Some good banter going on here. Fatboy TW78, how did the rash of recent infringements not run afoul of multiple state constitutional articles around not creating privileged classes of people. Fatboy W78, I actually think that when you take a look at what's happened here in Washington State, let's focus exclusively on Washington, I actually think in many ways what we're dealing with is a much greater infringement upon the Washington State Constitution. Many of you, almost all of you, can recite the Second Amendment from heart, and we all know that one real well, and we always, it shall not be infringed, that's our mantra. But you really should pay careful attention to the Washington State Constitution, Article 1, Section 24, because I think the language is actually more protective for the lawful and responsible gun owner in Washington State under our state constitution. Article 1, Section 24 says, and I quote, "The right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired, but nothing in this section shall be construed as authorizing individuals or corporations to organize, maintain, or employ an armed body of men." When we compare that language to the Second Amendment, let's go ahead and pull it up right here, and then we'll take a look at it, because this is really important when you take a look at the language and what some of the gun grabbers say about that, because the Second Amendment, as you know, starts with a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, we so routinely focus on the right of the individual and shall not be infringed. And I understand why we focus on that language, and shall has very important legal words. But the gun grabbers will argue that, but the condition precedence is that there's a well-regulated militia, which is necessary to the security of the free state. And so that means that the right to bear arms really lies with our militia or with our military and not with the individual, even though, of course, it then says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms. But when you take a look at what Article 1, Section 24 says, it starts with the right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. And if you want to take plain language definitions, infringe means basically to stop something. Impaired, if you want to take the definition that comes out of, RCW 4661-502, the DUI statute, it's to affect to any appreciable degree. So a magazine restriction would, of course, affect your ability. It would impair your ability to protect yourself, as would restricting certain types of firearms, or as would restricting certain types of ammunition. So you can see that in many ways, the language of the Washington State Constitution is far more favorable to our interest here. So it's a good question. Tyson C., longtime viewer, Tyson C. Thank you, Tyson C. Tyson C. was like my first subscriber ever, okay? And I'm not joking, he really was. If a pediatric medical facility bans firearms with front door signage, are CCWs exempt? Also, would the legal consequences be more consistent with a school or Kroger's if ignored? Great question. That's a good question. It's more like a Kroger's, because when we take a look at Tyson C., great question. When we take a look at RCW 9.41.300, which kind of lists all the areas that we can't take firearms, and we take a look at 941.280, 285, which kind of gets into the schools, 941.305, that gets into some of the open carry things, we don't see anything about pediatric hospitals. In fact, the only medical facilities by law, which excludes our right to possess a firearm, are licensed mental health facilities. So yeah, it would be more of a trespass. You could get trespassed or something like that. You couldn't actually be arrested because you haven't committed a crime at that point. Good question. Okay. Eagle Bear Morgan, great question. I have a CNC router. Can I mark my lowers myself in accordance with the ATF marking regs they are imposing? Great question. The answer, unfortunately, is no, because if you take a look at what House Bill 1705 is going to require, and then if you look at what the ATF's doing over there on the federal level, they essentially are mimicking what we're doing over here. So no, only certain types of FFLs can do the engraving for you. I wish the answer were different, but no, that is not going to fly. 1984 Mac. If I have two homes, one in Washington and another one in Texas, and I have an ID in Washington and a driver's license in Texas, is it legal to buy a pistol in either state? 1984 Mac. It is legal to buy a pistol in any state in the United States. You don't need to be a resident of any state. You can go over to Arkansas and buy a gun. You can go to Maine and buy a gun. You can go to Massachusetts and, I don't know, try to buy a gun. Good luck with that. But no, you don't need to be a resident of a state. Now, there may be state rules as it relates to if you want to purchase a gun and have a record of it, but there is nothing wrong with you buying a gun in Texas, bringing it to Washington, or vice versa, and there's nothing wrong with you buying a gun in some other state that you don't reside in and bringing it back to one of those. So, good question. Okay, well, you guys got a lot of really good jokes in here, which I think are really awesome. But hang on a second. Here we go. I got to do something here real quick. All right. Fatboy TW78 got another question. Can I use a high velocity air gun and rubber bullets or pepper balls on trespassers who are engaged in something akin to stealing a catalytic converter? Okay, so Fatboy TW78, 2 videos I want you to watch. One is how much force can I use to protect my catalytic converter? And then number 2, I did a video on the use of less lethal ammo. The problem is that it's called less lethal ammo. It's not called non-lethal ammo. And if you take a look at the specs on this stuff and the feet per second in which it's flying at, it's cooking down range pretty quick. And you could seriously injure a person. So do I think that if you use a high power air gun or some kind of less lethal ammo, are we going to suddenly have not a use of lethal force analysis when we're taking a look at your use of force? No, I don't. I really honestly don't. I don't think it's a wise idea. I think it's good for some things, but again, when we start discharging weapons, even if we're shooting non-lethal rounds, we have to recognize that they're cooking down range really fast. They can still cause injury. They can actually still cause death. And because of that, I think they're going to use a lethal force, use of force analysis when they're trying to determine the legality of what you've done here. Good question. All right, here we go. Big Don. The main question I have tonight is why can't us in the Spokane Valley area get involved in a lawsuit against the magazine ban? I listened to the video about it, but it doesn't include us. Why? That's a really good question, and I don't have the answer for that, okay? The Firearms Policy Coalition really does great work, and I think the world of them. And by the way, their channel, Armed Scholar, really does some really good stuff on here. But obviously, they have some attorneys who really think that those particular counties may have judges where they're going to make the best record, or they might start off with a favorable ruling. There's got to be a method to their madness here, okay? And so I know that they got very talented, smart lawyers working for them. So why they don't pick Spokane County as the county in which to begin that action, I don't know. It's a question that's much better posed to the people over at Firearms Policy Coalition, but I wanted to disseminate to you the exact information that they put out. I wanted to get it to you guys. The video's gotten several thousand views. I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing that. Let's take a look at what else we got. You ate poop. Do you like my jokes, WK? It means a lot to me to make you laugh. I am laughing, but I need some questions here real quick, okay? I mean, I get it, but all right, let's go back here to Big Bosley. Big Bosley asked a question about how do you prove that your untraceable firearm was manufactured prior to July 1st, 2019. Well, how do you prove any of this crap? I mean, that's the problem with all of these laws. How do you prove that you really had that magazine prior to the enactment of the magazine ban? I mean, that's the problem. Now, remember, in 5078, there really was, in the original bill, there was a provision that would have actually required us to photograph it and all of that other stuff and have metadata to support the age of the photograph and all this other crap that was taken out of the bill. And me and a guy who's working on a gun trust right now over in the Spokane area, we're working on possibly doing what's called a Schedule C. We're going to add it to his gun trust. It's going to be a photographic declaration of all of his magazine ownership. Do I think he needs to do it? No, I don't think he needs to. But he's very meticulous, very detail-oriented kind of guy, and he wants to do this because he doesn't trust government. That I do get. And so we're going to be doing a magazine certification for him. I'll let you guys know how it goes. So Hillbilly J, does the untraceable firearm serialization thing apply to even single-shot homemade pistols, ABD rifles also, or just the 80% lowers? What about homemade muzzle loaders? Are they exempt? Homemade muzzle loaders are exempt, okay? But anything else that falls under their definition of a firearm has to be traceable. And if you take a look at what a frame and receiver is now defined under 1705, now new sections 941.010, and you take a look at what an unfinished frame or receiver is defined as, that basically constitutes a firearm under state law and soon to be under federal law too with what the ATF is doing. So yeah, the days of the 80% lowers, guys, gals, unfortunately, for the time being, as I read the tea leaves, they're coming to an end. They're coming to an end. And the only things that you're going to be able to purchase are going to be serialized parts. And that's just the way it is. All right. Jason Hotchkiss. I had a grade school teacher with the same last name at Des Moines Elementary, and that's a unique last name. I wonder if there's any relation. Once the magazine ban goes into effect, can I go to another state and buy magazines and bring them home to Washington strictly for personal use? That is a really good question. It actually is. Because this law is so poorly written, we don't really understand. Unfortunately, Jason Hotchkiss, that would be the unlawful act of importing high-capacity magazines. As we know, once Senate Bill 5078 becomes law, July 1st, we cannot sell, offer for sale, purchase, import, distribute, or manufacture high-capacity magazines. So if you drove over to the Cabela's in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, bought a bunch of 30-round PMags and brought them back to the state, if you were caught, that's a huge if, but if you were caught, yeah, that would be the unlawful act of importing high-capacity magazines, even if they're for your own personal use. I know it's ridiculous. Now, if you get away with it, how are they ever going to know that those 30-round PMags were just purchased and those ones were purchased 4 years ago? I don't know. Again, we don't serialize those, and I don't want to give anyone any other kinds of thoughts. But that's a good question, actually, and I appreciate that. First round pop. Can we make an AR pistol compliant by removing the brace and installing a buffer tube without a provision for a brace? Let's talk about this whole AR pistol SBR thing for a few minutes, because this has got a lot of people worked up, and for good reason. And I will put the links for some of this down below when I post this video for the 4-point form that they got. And it's actually called, and I'll pull it up here real quick. Here we go. It is an ATF worksheet 49.99. Okay, so if you just type in ATF worksheet 49.99, you're going to get that, and you can see the point scale. But this is essentially, in a nutshell, let me try to take a horribly convoluted piece of crap legislation or rulemaking and try to simplify it for you. Anything in the configuration of that firearm which suggests that the firearm is meant to be shouldered is going to start racking up points, okay? So the placement of the optics, the type of the optics, the rear stock, and how is it designed on the back? Is there a vertical foregrip? Is there some kind of other foregrip that suggests the second hand is going towards the front nearer the muzzle? These are the types of things that they're going to be looking for. And as soon as you hit 4 points or more, you no longer are in possession of an AR pistol. You're now in possession of a short-barreled rifle, which means you will either have to pay the tax stamp and do your Form 4 and all that good stuff, or you're going to have to surrender the weapon. Now, when we take the buttstock off altogether, all we're left with the buffer tube, I think we can all agree that that's not going to be particularly comfortable for shouldering. But here's the other problem with that, is that when we take the pistol brace off, the one mechanism that we have that theoretically is designed to make it fireable with one hand has been removed at that point. Now, could you fire an AR pistol with only a buffer tube on it with one hand? Yeah, of course you could. And for some folks, it might not be a challenge at all. For other people, it might be very difficult on recoil management. I mean, the AR platform in general doesn't recoil like a lot of people think it would. But do I think that that's going to get you to the promised land of not having to worry about it anymore? It might help a little bit, but I think there's going to be a lot of other things. And when you look at that Form 4999, you'll see other things in the configuration of the firearm, very normal, common things that we see in the configuration of firearms, that the ATF is inferring to say that that's an SBR, not an AR pistol. Good question. Robert McGee, just when do my 10-plus round mags need to be in Washington to avoid being an importer? Anytime before July 1st or on June 30th at 11:59, they will be on. The law goes into effect on midnight, July 1st, 2022. So, theoretically, if you wanted to get down to when can you actually still get a magazine into this state, lawfully, it would be no later than 11:59 on the last night of June, okay? So get it while the going's good. Get out there now and start buying them. It's a good question. Corey Hogstead, will you do another ATF on AR style pistols? The other video you did seemed a little mocking and incomplete. Okay. First of all, Corey, I apologize if I appeared mocking, especially to the ATF. I really would not want to offend the ATF. And if it seemed a little incomplete, it probably because we're trying to guess at where the ATF is coming from, and your guess is as good as mine. Okay. You ate poop. I want. Oh man, you ate poop. That's really funny stuff you got going on. All right. Endoplastic rectillum, JH, according to one of Washington Gun Law's previous videos, the new improved RCW prohibits importation, which is what you are asking about, so you cannot. You need to plus max that. Yeah, I agree. I agree with exactly what endoplasmatic guy said there, which is if you're going to bring the magazines in, you got to bring them in right now. Oh, here's a good one. Concerned citizen. In a will, can you leave family members NFA items without them having to file additional paperwork? Oh, that is a good question. This is a good segue. I'm going to talk to you guys about something that I have resisted doing videos on this, but I'm about to start getting into this because I just needed the infrastructure here at Washington Gun Law to be able to handle the workload. But we're going to talk about gun trusts coming up soon. But here's the thing. When it comes to NFA items, okay, short-barreled shotguns, short-barreled rifles, suppressors, probably the most common NFA item, other destructive devices, machine guns, good luck with that one. We got to understand that anytime there is a transfer of an NFA item, that transferee is going to pay a $200 tax stamp as well. So if you die and the firearm, the NFA items are left to your son, 3 suppressors and 2 short-barreled rifles, he's going to be paying $1,000 in tax stamps when they all get transferred to him, because they will need to be transferred to him so long as he's able to accept those items and receive those items. Now, if they were in a gun trust, and this is why why gun trust and NFA items are really kind of a match made in heaven. Do I think you need gun trust if you have a gun collection? Not necessarily. Do I think you need a gun trust if you have a huge gun collection? Maybe a little bit more, yeah. Do I think you need a gun trust if you have NFA items? Yes. Yeah, I do. That's the one type of people I was like, I think I would have those. But once it's in the trust, you got to remember the trust owns it. So when you die, depending on how the trust is structured, the assets will be divvied out to certain beneficiaries, but it's done through the trust and not through any other type of thing. So there are lots of reasons for which you can be doing gun trust, but if you're into NFA items, National Firearms, or you're thinking about getting into NFA items like suppressors, and we'll talk about suppressors here in a second, then yeah, I would start thinking about establishing a gun trust. On suppressors, this is what I want to say to anyone who's interested in getting into suppressors. I think right now, in the current state with the ATF, trying to do a Form 1 and manufacture your own suppressor, you might as well go outside and throw rocks at the moon, okay? I think you got about an equal chance of hitting the moon as I do getting your Form 1 approved right now. So good luck with that, but when it fails, remember I told you so. If you want to get into suppressors, and I was talking to a huge suppressor rep over the weekend out at Sharpshooting out in Spokane Valley. Spokane's only indoor range, by the way. Great facility, by the way. And we were talking, and he said, listen, on these Form 4 e-filings, he's getting approval sometimes between 17 and 21 days. Okay, those are quick approvals. Form 4. What's a Form 4? Well, that's you're buying a completed suppressor. Now, is that better than buying diversified machine parts and trying to turn it into it? Well, yeah, for a couple of reasons. Number one, we know the ATF is all over your ass on that. And number two, diversified machine, I don't know if they're making parts that are really suitable for that purpose. Now, when we're talking about high-end, properly manufactured suppressors, yeah, you're going to spend some money on it, but listen, you know what you're getting, okay? And you're getting it from a reputable manufacturer who has a good, reputable relationship with the ATF, and the Form 4 is going to get approved. So right now, if you are interested in suppressors, Form 4 everything. Go buy a nice, reputable manufacturer, get one, Form 4. I think that's going through. Form 1, good luck with that. Someone asked about a concealed carry class. So here in Washington State, concealed carry in Washington State, let's go over those rules again real quick. The rules as for where we can and when we need a concealed carry license or a CPL, concealed pistol license in Washington State, are found in RCW 941050. The how do you apply for one and get one is found in 941070, and any exceptions to our concealed carry law is found in 941060. You apply to your local law enforcement agency. In Washington State, you do not need to take a concealed carry class. There are many states that do require it. Texas is one. You do not need to take any type of basic education to obtain a concealed pistol license. Interestingly, though, if you do want to buy a semi-automatic rifle, you do need to take a 1639 safety class, but that's to save lives. But you will not be required to take a safety class to get the CPL. Now, that's what you have the right to do or what you have the right not to do, right? What do I think is the lawful and responsible thing? I think that if you're new to firearms, there's no such thing as having too much education. And yeah, you need to spend a lot of time with a good instructor, learn how to use the weapon, manipulate the weapon, be proficient in the weapon, learn how not to blow your freaking head off, learn how not to end up in the morgue. But then you need to do training with guys like me and others so that we can keep you out of prison too, okay? So if you're new to firearms, and we got a lot of people out here watching the channel that are new to firearms, and God bless you, thank you for joining us. There's no such thing as too much training. There really isn't, okay? And it's not just going to the range and running a couple hundred rounds down range and all that. I'm talking about doing some real training. Learn how to pull the trigger correctly, okay? Once you learn how to pull the trigger correctly, learn how to pull the trigger in the types of situations that you might actually find yourself in. Because I can assure you that a self-defense situation is a little different than shooting at a paper target that's not shooting back at you. So do the training you need and do the legal training, okay? We spent all this time training this trigger finger so that we can just subconsciously do what we need to do. But we need to train our brain on the legal stuff so that we're subconsciously operating within the confines of the law as well. Okay. So there's more questions here about gun trust. So let me just explain gun trust in a nutshell, okay? I want you to assume for a second that this glass of water is actually a trust, okay? What a trust becomes is like an imaginary person in the eyes of the law, okay? It's created through documents. And then what happens is the person who created this trust, let's say it was me, I am the grantor or the settler. And what I can do is I can put things into this trust, okay? Now, once I put them into that trust, I don't own them anymore. The trust owns them. And the trust is managed by a trustee, who is not me, it's somebody else. And the trustee gets to enjoy all of the assets that are in the trust. So anything I put into this, the trustee, because I appointed them to be my trustee, they have my permission to use it. And I can also create beneficiaries for this vessel here, so that once I die, my beneficiaries will receive those assets in accordance with the way that I sent it out to be, okay? That's what a trust does. Now, why is a trust really important for firearms? Well, because for some types of firearms, NFA items in particular, okay, we can't be in possession of an NFA item unless that NFA item is actually registered to us, okay? So, but there's some exceptions, and I'll get to that, okay? So let's say I own a suppressor. Let's say this is a suppressor, and I want to give it to my brother-in-law so he can take it to the range and go shoot with it, okay? If I let him go to the range with that suppressor, an NFA item, he's committing a crime, I'm committing a crime, okay? Because I gave him the suppressor. It's an NFA item. Now, if I go to the range with him, and I'm with him the whole time that he's using it, that's one thing. But if I let him want to use it by himself, no, that's fine. Same with an SBR or any other type of NFA item. Now, if my brother-in-law, though, was my trustee or one of my beneficiaries, you see, now I don't own the item. The trust owns the item, and he's a part of the trust as either a trustee or a beneficiary, which means he gets to use the items as well. That's the importance of NFA trust. That's why you want, if you have NFA items, I really do think you need to have a gun trust. Now, if you have let's say you have a large collection of firearms, and you got several beneficiaries, and you're going to want to maybe, well, I want the shotguns to go here, and I want the hunting rifles to go here, and some of the handguns here, and some of the handguns. Okay, you can do that in a regular will. You can totally do that in a regular will. But when that goes through probate, you got to remember that the record of all the firearms that are in that collection could become known to the public, and some people don't like that, and I respect their privacy. So what you can also do is you can structure how the firearm collection is inherited upon your death through the gun trust, and not have to deal with that in the regular will and other types of estate planning. So, is there a reason to get a gun trust for every type of gun collection? No, there's not necessarily. Is there anything wrong with doing it? Absolutely nothing wrong with doing it. If you're getting into NFA items, or you have NFA items and you don't have a gun trust, that would be really probably the time to do it. Okay, Robert McGee, so that there is no confusion, I am an Idaho resident. I do not see anything that restricts returning to Washington with high-capacity magazines. Returning to Washington with high-capacity magazines to residents. Okay, Robert, I'm not quite sure what you're getting in here. So, and again, I don't mean to be standoffish here. So, if you are a Idaho resident and you take magazines into this state, and then you leave and you take the magazines back with you, you haven't imported anything. Those are magazines you lawfully possessed. You came into the state, they were still in lawful possession, you left the state with them. That's not importation. Now, if you come in with 35 PMags and you leave them all at your cousin's house that happens to be in the Tri-Cities and you take off, no, that is the act of importing high-capacity magazines. That would be unlawful after July 1st of this year. Right now, it would be totally lawful, okay? That's why I think when you go after July 1st to Mag Warehouse or Cheaper Than Dirt or one of those other places, and you go to buy yourself a bunch of 30-round PMags, you're going to be told they can't ship to Washington, because that's going to be the restriction on us. So I do believe that that's the unlawful importation, and my advice would be, if you want to stay within the confines of the law, don't do it. Will accessories or enhancements to a 10-round mag that extends its capacity be unimportable, e.g. shortened followers or deep floor plates and things like that? Yeah, it's a good question. If you take a look at the statute, it is any component that will help manufacture or make a high-capacity magazine, which is defined by Washington law starting July 1st as 10 rounds or more. I know that's not a high-capacity magazine, but that's how our state defines it. So yeah, anything that I think is being used to extend the capacity of the magazine beyond the normal 10 rounds would be unlawful to import into the state of Washington. Candidly, I think you're going to find most manufacturers not willing to ship it. Will it still be possible to import springs and followers for the repair of already possessed magazines having a capacity of 10 rounds? Yeah, I do believe that is a question that we're actually asking for an Attorney General's opinion on. There's actually several things that we're asking for an Attorney General advisory opinion on. But, yeah, at the current time, you got to remember that those are just springs, those are just plates, there's nothing to indicate that they are specifically designed for a magazine which is actually going to exceed 10 rounds. Now, here's where the rubber is going to meet the road a couple of places down the road on 5078. Number one, I have no doubt in my mind that there's going to be some legislator somewhere, sometime soon, who's going to want to do, Senate Bill 5079, and that's going to be like, I just want to add one word to the statute, and that word is going to be possessed, and then the whole ball game changes. Now we moved into California here, okay? So that's one of the things that we want to be really concerned on. Now, the other thing on magazine restrictions is that for many of you, you may have seen the video on this. There is a case that is up for review before the United States Supreme Court. I don't know if the Supreme Court is going to accept it. The case is called Duncan v. Bonta, Duncan v. Bonta. That is a challenge to California's 10-round magazine ban, and I'm praying to God that the United States Supreme Court accepts review on that, okay? So, again, more questions about the magazines, and I think that's really good. All right, Bob Lee. I was watching the Yankee Marshal, who also lives in Washington State, and had questions about U.S. Law Shield in Washington State. Would you go on this show to explain it to him by chance? Would I go on Yankee Marshal show? I would love to go on Yankee Marshal show. Bob Lee, tell Yankee Marshal that he can get a hold of me anytime. I would love to talk to him. I actually find him to be immensely entertaining. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says. I do agree with a lot of things he says, but as far as entertainment value and knowledge, I think what he's doing on YouTube is really good, and I actually enjoy him. I think his live chats are actually good, because his live chats are actually really live, unlike mine today, which is a farce, because we're having to tape this because I effed up the settings on this thing. So my fault on that. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to Yankee Marshal about that. As some of you may know, I am the program attorney for U.S. Law Shield, and so I'm going to give you a very objective take on this, because I, as a lawyer, abhor lawyers that are trying to sell products. I think that lawyers who act like salesmen just look like douchebags, pardon my language, but they do. And my senior partner, the guy I learned to practice the law from the most, was very adamant never to act like that. So I'm going to give a very objective viewpoint, and I'm going to preface all this by, if you got more questions about U.S. Law Shield, please contact U.S. Law Shield directly. Now, you can go to WashingtonGunLaw.com, and you can find their contact information right at the top of the homepage. You can certainly Google them, and you'll find them. But many people think that concealed carry insurance in Washington State is unlawful. And I've talked about this before. One of the things that I think the political left is way better at than the political right is labeling things, okay? Ghost guns, assault rifles. I mean, you name it. They have all high-capacity magazines, military-grade ammunition. They label everything, okay? And it works. It sticks, because people are lazy when it comes to learning, and the media is in on this as well, okay? Well, when we talk about this particular issue, one second here. When we talk about concealed carry insurance, a lot of people think it's murder insurance. It's unlawful murder insurance. Why? Well, because the Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, did a really good job of labeling that. And so a lot of people thought that we passed legislation that outlawed that type of insurance, okay? That is not what happened. What happened is that Attorney General Ferguson did take exception to all of the concealed carry self-defense insurance companies doing business in Washington. And he and then Insurance Commissioner Mike Kreidler got together, and they said, hey, they want to run these companies out of business, okay? And they did. What they did, though, is they just rewrote the regulations for how these companies needed to be structured so that they're in their current existence, in their current format, they were not compliant with Washington law. And so all of them ended up having to go out of business for that reason. But here's the deal. When they wrote the regulations, they put right there on paper what you had to do in order to become a viable insurance company in Washington State. There was no trade secrets there. There was no secret backroom deal. They put it right there in the regulations. In order to sell this product, you have to do A, B, C, D, E. It was all right there. Law Shield just followed what the Attorney General told them to do, and that's why they're up and running in the state of Washington and have been for a couple of years. Now, are other companies capable of doing this? I don't see any reason why they're not. I don't know why USCCA or the NRA or whatever hasn't done the legwork necessary to do it, and I'm assuming at some point they may, but at the current time, U.S. Law Shield is the only concealed carry insurance that I know is active in Washington State. Now, we've done a video on it. That's all I'm going to say about it. That's the God's honest truth about what happened here. And again, the tough questions and whether this product is right for you, I think those are questions that you need, discussions you need to have with the folks at U.S. Law Shield. The purpose of Washington gun law is really just to get you guys educated and to start building an online community of lawful and responsible gun owners, because God knows our rights are under siege right now, and we really need to stick together. All right, boy, Big Don, and Fat Boy TW78, thank you very much for contributing to my almost live session here today. Yeah, Bob Lee, when will we see the release of the gun rights case that was heard by the Supreme Court? Great question. Let's talk about that. This is a good segue to talk about something. The case is New York Pistol and Rifle Association v. Bruin. It is a case that was argued several months ago, and yeah, we are expecting a ruling at any moment. Now, the question before the court is, does the Second Amendment guarantee the right to protect yourself with a firearm outside of your home? And all of us go, well, of course it does, right? Well, yeah, I think that is the answer. But see, in many states, well, no, I should take that back. In some states, okay, the bluest of the blues, California, Hawaii, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maryland, states like that. When you apply for a concealed carry license, the government has the arbitrary right to grant it or not. It kind of depends on whether you really prove that you need it. Do you have enough special needs that we will grant you the authority to carry a firearm and protect yourself? Well, that's what happened to Mr. Bruin in New York, and him and the New York Pistol Rifle Association sued. And so the issue there is simply are these may carry states? See, Washington's a shall carry. Okay, in Washington State, when you apply for a concealed pistol license, if law enforcement cannot disprove your eligibility to possess a firearm, then you shall be given a concealed pistol license. It's just that simple. In states like New York, though, it's may, and they get to decide. And of course, in some jurisdictions, the answer is always no. I have a little sister who lives down in used to live in Santa Monica, now lives in Westwood in LA. When she moved she's in the TV business down there. She does really well for herself. She makes great money. She moved into this condo in Westwood a number of years ago, not far from UCLA. It was a gorgeous neighborhood. She spent way too much for the condo, but it's LA, right? It was a gorgeous neighborhood. Now, when you go to her neighborhood, it's like Campground of America. There's tents everywhere, except, instead of, smelling barbecue, you're smelling, heroin being smoked and stuff like that. And the neighborhood has completely gone to hell in a handbasket, and she lives by herself. And so I have encouraged her on a couple of occasions to get a concealed pistol license or concealed carry license in California. They will not grant one to her. They will not. And so what the New York Pistol and Rifle Association case is going to do is it's going to tell these states, if Bruin prevails, which many of us believe will, is that, hey, this may issue crap, this has got to end. All you states got to become a shall issue, because the Second Amendment guarantees the right to protect yourself in and outside of your home. And so that's really the one ruling that we're very hopeful of getting. Now, could the Supreme Court maybe go a little further and decide, hey, we're going to kind of lay out some other laws so that we kind of send notice to everybody? Yeah, that could. And one of the things, the big legal, if you want to geek out on the legal side of things, okay, is that the way that Second Amendment cases are meant to be reviewed, when we're trying to determine the constitutionality of a firearm restricted, is we are supposed to give it strict scrutiny, which means we're supposed to take a look at the statute or the constitutional amendment and give the language in there its very plain and literal meaning. That's it. And so when you look at a term like shall not be infringed, it kind of means, well, shall not be infringed, right? And so that always bodes well for Second Amendment cases. And in D.C. v. Heller, the last big Supreme Court firearms case, Second Amendment case, the Justice Scalia made it very clear that strict scrutiny was the analysis to be used when analyzing firearms restrictions. He made it very clear. But as clear as he made it, none of the circuit courts are doing it. Because when they do it that way, you're going to have to overturn these gun regulations. So many of them have been applying an intermediate scrutiny. As a matter of fact, we saw that in the case of Duncan v. Bonta as well, okay? And so if the court could, A, make a ruling that, hey, listen, every state is a shall issue state because that's what the Second Amendment guarantees. And number two, in the future, any other Second Amendment challenges, we're going to apply a strict scrutiny analysis. That would be an excellent day for those in the lawful and responsible gun owners nationwide. And with the current makeup of this Supreme Court, I don't see how they don't at least get 5 votes and probably 6. Hillbilly J, is Washington State is a shall issue state? Yes, it is. Okay. Big Don, I have posted many questions here and still no answers. So what are we supposed to think when that happens? Okay. All right. Big Don. We're going to go back and find some of your questions here. Here's one. Why is it that all the YouTube channels I want to question, but they all play the damn game of, oh, post it here or here bit, and you never hear from any of them. They want people to ask. Okay, Big Don, I apologize if I did not get to your question at some point. Understand that some videos that I post will have 700, 800 comments on them. And the time necessary to go through each and every one of those, I simply do not have. I wish I did. But I have a law practice to run too. I actually have a really large law practice to run. So I try to get this stuff done as best as I can. Yeah, okay, everyone's trying to calm down Big Don right now. And Big Don, okay. Big Don, I'm so tired of all the bullshit laws, but no one seems to want to do anything about any of them. Okay, well, that one is not a question, but it's a statement that I agree with. And I think that there's been a lot of frustration expressed to us here at Washington Gun Law, like, why aren't you guys doing something about it? Understand, again, that we are a trial level law firm. We deal in the courtroom. We don't deal in the appellate level. And it's kind of the difference between a heart surgeon and a brain surgeon, okay? Both are really good surgeons, but you got to make sure they're operating on the right thing. I'm the guy who takes things into the courtroom and argues them there. If they are going to be challenged on an appellate or constitutional level, that's when a different type of law practice is involved. And the Firearms Policy Coalition, the Second Amendment Foundation, happen to be well equipped with those types of attorneys. And so that's why you're going to be seeing the challenges come out of them. Now, if any of them want to reach out to me and ask for help, call me, please. I'm here, 425-765-0487, Washington Gun Law. I'm more than willing to help you out. Okay, I got to find more questions. Okay, Big Don, just wondering why is that no one will answer your questions about anything unless you give them effing money. Hey, Big Don, in case you missed, I don't monetize this channel. I know many of you have called me with questions. And Big Don, if you have questions, feel free to call Washington Gun Law at 425-765-0487. I know that a lot of our viewers will testify that I will take the call, I will call you back, and we will have a conversation, and we will get your questions answered. All right, guys, listen, it is a little bit after 8 o'clock now, and I want to, again, apologize for this horrific live stream experience. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to get the video converted and uploaded tonight so that we can have some questions. I apologize. I'm out of town starting next week so long as Alaska Airlines pilots show up at SeaTac Airport tomorrow. The week after, I'm back on Monday. I'm probably going to schedule another live event for Wednesday or Thursday. We're going to get a real live event done on April because I owe it to you guys. I apologize for this. This is a totally abysmal performance on my part, and I accept responsibility. I want to thank you guys for a few things. First of all, when I started doing this channel back in last summer, I just did it really as a way to kind of educate people and to help build the Washington Gun Law brand a little bit. But most importantly, it was to educate you, the lawful and responsible gun owner. And in that less than a year now, We have now surpassed 30,000 subscribers, and it would not be possible without all of you out there, and so I can't thank you enough. And in that time that I've been doing this channel and getting a chance to run around the state and speak to folks, I got to tell you that the community, this community of lawful and responsible gun owners, is absolutely the best community I've ever had a chance to be part of. You people are so wonderful. You're nice, good, law-abiding citizens who just love your country and love your family and love your neighbors, and you're exactly the kind of people that we need more of in this country. And I think that that is kind of a nice full circle all the way back to what we first started talking about, which was from our good friend Charles Hetrick, who posed the question earlier on, which is, you know, let's take one of our liberal friends to the gun range this month. So let's all promise that we're going to grab one of our gun grabber friends, ones who doesn't understand, and just say, hey, listen, I just want to take you to the range so you can have an open mind and show them the excitement that comes with your Second Amendment rights. Show them the utility of being able to protect yourself and your family. Get them to recognize that government has never really been in a position to protect you, and in today's political environment, they are absolutely not in a position to protect you. Some of them are completely unwilling. Most of them are simply incapable due to underfunding and other problems with the local community. But if we take people and we educate them and we start realizing what a useful tool it is, I do believe that the Second Amendment debate in this country can change forever. You want to know the best way to change the Second Amendment debate is go out and get all those super moms. All those moms that dropped in on class the last couple of years and saw what was being taught to our kids and how it was being taught. And they're the ones that are at the school board meetings raising hell now and protecting their kids. Well, you know what? Arm all of them. Arm all of them for 6 months and let them see how useful that tool is to protecting their family. And then, after you've armed them for about 6 months or so, start talking about taking the gun away then. Let's see what they say then. Because once we get the soccer moms, once we get the super moms educated about the Second Amendment, the gun debate in this country changes forever. Okay, again, I'm going to get the video out. We'll get the information about Patreon out. I want to thank all you guys. I know a lot of you are frustrated. Probably you're commenting on other videos. God damn you, Bill. You totally screwed up. You son of a bitch. You told me. And I apologize. I screwed this up tonight. I would love to say, oh, it was the wind and it was some technical. No. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I totally effed up tonight. I screwed up something on my settings. I'm going to have to get my computer geek in here. I was ready to go. I hit the wrong button and everything got screwed up. So this is totally on me. I do thank those of you who stuck around, asked questions tonight. I really do. You gave me material to work with. I'm going to get this video converted real quick. I'm going to get it uploaded right away. God bless all of you. And listen, last time, just got to say it to you. Remember, part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is we got to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to any of us in any instance that we find ourselves, okay? I'll see you guys in about a week and a half when I get back from vacation. Thanks for watching, and in the meantime, all of you, stay safe.